NATO has warned that the crisis over Ukraine could be entering its most dangerous moment as Russia's military build-up continues. Russian forces are carrying out manoeuvres in Belarus and its navy is massing off the Black Sea coast. The Commissioner of London's Metropolitan Police, Cressida Dick, is to step down. She said she'd been left with no choice after the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, made it clear that he had no confidence in her leadership. Canada's truck protest has ratcheted up with a further border crossing targeted over COVID restrictions. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has warned that the two-week-long protests are threatening Canada's economy. And inflation in the US has hit an annual rate of 7.5%, the highest in 4 decades. The price increases were driven by rising food, electricity and housing costs.
In Madagascar, officials say the number of dead from tropical cyclone Batsirai has reached 92 as humanitarian groups increase aid efforts. U.S. troops crossed into Romania from Hungary late Wednesday. About 1,000 U.S. troops are being deployed there because of the Russia-Ukraine crisis. In Canada, truck drivers continue a protest against COVID-19 restrictions by blocking traffic in Ottawa and at the U.S. border. And at the Beijing Olympics, reports say a test shows the presence of a banned substance in the blood of a Russian figure skater.
We begin with the coronavirus situation here in Japan, where the government has opted to extend the quasi-emergency in Tokyo and 12 other prefectures until March 6th. The request for the public to avoid unnecessary travel and restaurants and bars to close early had been due to expire on Sunday.
The number of infections is still on the rise. Also, experts are warning that the number of seriously ill patients could increase down the road. We need to remain vigilant to avoid possible social and economic problems.
When one more prefecture, Kochi, is added to the list on Saturday, the quasi-emergency will encompass 36 of the country's 47 prefectures.
Currently, 1 in about 80 Tokyo residents has tested positive. They are either hospitalized or recuperating at a facility or at home.
The Tokyo metropolitan government reported nearly 19,000 new cases on Thursday. That's about 1,700 fewer than last Thursday and the second day in a row to see a week-on-week decline. Still, experts say Tokyo remains in the grip of an unprecedented critical situation. The 7-day moving average of new cases reached 17,686 on Wednesday. That's over 1,600 more than the previous week. Now, outside the capital, the infection rate also remains stubbornly high. Authorities reported nearly 100,000 new cases across the nation on Thursday. 1,270 people were listed in serious condition, up 58 from the day before. 164 coronavirus-related deaths were confirmed. Now, more countries in Southeast Asia are relaxing coronavirus border controls as they try to promote economic recovery. This includes the Philippines, which has started to welcome back foreign visitors for the first time in nearly 2 years. Fully vaccinated travelers who test negative for the coronavirus are no longer required to quarantine as of Thursday. Officials had aimed to reopen in December, but suspended the plans due to the spread of the Omicron variant. In Malaysia, the government's advisory body suggested the country to fully reopen to international travelers as early as next month. That's despite surging daily infections, which have hit their highest level in months. Officials have recommended tourists to be allowed to visit without quarantines upon arrival. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has met with British Foreign Secretary Liz Truss in an effort to defuse the ongoing crisis in Ukraine. But the talks led to little progress. The two met in Moscow on Thursday. Tensions in the region have been running high since Russia deployed about 100,000 troops along its border with Ukraine.
Russia is not threatening any country. In fact, we are the ones being threatened. The U.S. and Europe are clearly using Ukraine's president to break the power balance with our country.
Russia's actions in attempting to destabilize Ukrainian democracy and the ability of Ukrainians to determine their own future. These acts have actually had the effect of strengthening NATO's resolve and turning the Ukrainian people further away from Russia.
Truss called on Russia to withdraw from the border. But Lavrov called the demand regrettable as the troops are deployed on Russian soil and have a right to be there. Turning now to Myanmar, where families are being pressured to cut ties with those protesting against the military. Now, the father of a Myanmar soccer player who was granted refugee status in Japan says he's disowning his son. Pierre Lian Aun showed a three-finger salute as protest against the Myanmar military during a World Cup qualifier in Japan last May. He decided not to return to his country as he feared reprisal. A lawyer for his father said Pierre Lian Aun has been a source of problems and disappointment, so he decided to disown him. Pierre Lian Aun expressed concern about his father. He said he's heard families of people critical of the military have been arrested or had their houses seized, so he's worried. Recently, some parents in Myanmar have posted announcements in newspapers about disowning children identified as demonstrators as the military crackdown continues. In other news, the death toll from a devastating cyclone in Madagascar has risen to more than 90. Cyclone Batsirai slammed into the island nation off the southeastern coast of Africa on Saturday. Heavy rain flooded rivers and high winds blew the roofs off houses. Authorities said Wednesday at least 92 people have died and over 90,000 are displaced. They said 71 of the deaths occurred in a hard-hit southeastern district where houses were swept away by floodwaters. They added 95% of the structures in an East Coast city were destroyed. Madagascar was still reeling from a storm that struck last month. Cyclone Anna killed 55 people, while flooding and other disasters affected more than 100,000. Japan has delivered emergency supplies, including hundreds of tents and blankets, to the country. The UN World Food Programme is calling on the international community to provide swift assistance. Heavy snow is forecast for Tokyo and its surrounding areas through Friday morning, with officials warning of possible traffic disruptions. Parts of Yamanashi and Shizuoka prefectures recorded over 30 centimeters of snowfall on Thursday. Central Tokyo also saw some flurries after a morning of rain and sleet. Temperatures dropped to nearly 0 degrees Celsius in Tokyo's Nerima ward in the afternoon, with snow starting to accumulate on roads. The Metropolitan Expressway Company has closed some of its Shutoko routes as a precautionary measure to prevent vehicles from getting stranded. Officials say they may close more highways depending on the extent of the snowfall. East Japan Railway canceled express trains connecting Tokyo and its surrounding areas on Thursday. And more than 200 flights were canceled, most of them leaving from or arriving at the capital's Haneda airport. Now, heavy snow is rare in the Tokyo area. Weather officials are urging people to avoid non-essential travel and stay up to date with the latest information. South Korea's president is wading into the controversy over a potential World Heritage listing on a Japanese island. Earlier this month, the Japanese government recommended a group of gold mines on Sado Island to be listed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The South Korean government lodged a protest. It said Koreans were forced to work at the mines on the island in the Sea of Japan during World War II. President Moon Jae-in commented on the topic for the first time in a statement. He called it concerning, especially at a time when South Korea and Japan should be trying to resolve their historical issues. Last week, South Korea's foreign minister spoke to his counterpart in Japan and protested the bid. The Japanese minister called South Korea's claims about the mines groundless and regrettable. He also said Japan plans to discuss the possible heritage listing with South Korea. Japan's Ground Self-Defense Force and the U.S. Marine Corps are holding annual joint exercises in California. They're aiming to boost bilateral cooperation in light of China's increasing maritime activities. Media were allowed to observe some of the drills Wednesday. Japanese personnel who specialize in coastal landing operations joined in. In one of the exercises, multiple amphibious craft engaged in target practice in a coordinated maneuver. Japan's defense ministry launched a landing brigade 4 years ago to help defend the nation's southwestern islands against Chinese threats. 1,400 personnel are taking part in this year's exercises. The pandemic caused a slight change to the program after about 40 Japanese personnel tested positive for the coronavirus. Women's curling has kicked off with an early showdown between two of the medal favorites. Defending champion Sweden took on reigning bronze medalist Japan in preliminary round play. Sweden trailed 2-3 heading into the sixth end. But the number one ranked team in the world showed its championship pedigree by scoring 3 points to turn the game around. Sweden won by a final score of 8-5. Now, this year's competition is expected to be one of the most competitive in Olympic history. The stacked field includes all 3 medalists from both last year's World Championships and the Pyeongchang Games. The 10 teams will play each other once in the preliminary round, with the top 4 advancing to the semifinals. Next, U.S. superstar Nathan Chen has won the Olympic gold in men's figure skating. Japanese skaters made up the rest of the podium, but two-time defending champion Hanyu Yuzuru missed out on a medal with a 4th place finish. 22-year-old Chen completed a nearly perfect free program routine, successfully landing 5 quadruple jumps. His total score of 332.60 put him over 20 points, clear at the top. Chen had been widely tipped to win gold 4 years ago, but finished in 5th after a disastrous short program performance. He thanks his friends and family for helping him return to the Olympics, saying he could not have won gold without them. 18-year-old Kagiyama Yuma won silver in his Olympic debut, maintaining his position from after the short program. And Uno Shoma took the bronze, adding to the silver he won 4 years ago. Hanyu tried to claw his way back into contention after a disappointing showing in the short program, but he slipped on his opening quadruple axel attempt. He said afterward, he tried his best in a tough competition and is happy as long as fans enjoyed his performance. And as we've been reporting, people in the greater Tokyo area dealt with chilly and snowy conditions on Thursday. Our meteorologist Jonathan O explains the forecast during the 3-day holiday weekend that kicks off on Friday in our World Weather Report.
Hello, it took a little bit of time for us to really switch over from the rain, sleet type of setup into snow in Tokyo as we went through the day on Thursday. And we saw some decent amounts of reports. By the time the sun set, we saw amounts anywhere from 2 centimeters of snow depth in Tokyo, Chichibu in Saitama Prefecture at 8 centimeters, and Kawakuchiko seeing 32 centimeters of snow depth. With that snow continuing as the low continues pushing toward the east, we'll eventually see high pressure coming in behind it, and we'll see a much brighter day on Friday. Now, that's not the end of the story for Tokyo when it comes to snow. We're going to be watching out for the possible development of another low that's going to be moving by. We'll see rain, but then as it gets closer toward Tokyo, we're looking at snow. Yeah, again, Sunday into Monday, looking at that possibility. Highs are going to be in the single digits. Osaka and Fukuoka looking more on the rain side of things as we go into the first part of next week. But as we go into the holiday 3-day weekend here, it looks like that we're going to be seeing a relatively dry couple of days before rain and even some snow comes into the picture by Sunday. Down toward the south, very different story here. We're talking about heat that continues to really batter, particularly the western areas of Australia. And it's dry. That's not helping with the wildfire situation in the area. And the heat wave forecast over the next 24 hours, you see those peaks of red showing up. It's going to be hot, and so be on the lookout for that. 34 for the high in Perth, also into Port Hedland. Alice Springs also at 34 as we go into Friday. Meanwhile, a couple of systems here to keep in mind. There's that one big low pressure system moving across the Great Lakes in Ontario, another one back behind it. So these are just coming one after the other. So we're talking about some snow as we go throughout the next few days. Winnipeg, chilly, -9 with some snow on Friday. That's a look at your forecast. Hope you have a good day wherever you are.
Dr. Alok Patel, physician at Stanford Health, joining us now on this conversation. So, Doc, more states dropping mask mandates. As you know, we've been talking about this. New York being one of the latest to drop the mask requirement for indoor businesses. So why do you think this is happening now? And do you think it's the right call?
Well, Kira, I think it's the right call to begin looking critically at the data and telling the public this is the time for the off-ramp when we can lift those masks. But I do think that this should be done in a little bit more of a staggered fashion. I understand why the CDC is being a little bit more conservative, because they're talking about a broad swath, a large population, and it doesn't look good to see that divergence between federal guidelines and what local states are doing. But I understand when a city says, hey, we have a high vaccination rate, cases are going down, we have the hospital capacity, and there's still going to be a vaccine requirement for certain businesses. So go ahead and, as the New York Times says, engage at your own risk. And I understand that approach. I just wish it was done a little bit more in a staggered fashion and not kind of all at once.
Well, we learned this morning that Prince Charles, of course, that name brings about a lot of headlines, has COVID for a second time now after having it in March in 2020 before there was even a vaccine. So what does this say about getting COVID multiple times, even now with some questioning the effectiveness of vaccines against Omicron?
Kira, you nailed it right there. I have already gotten messages from a couple colleagues saying, oh my gosh, I'm worried that people are going to see this headline and say that vaccines don't work. This headline actually doesn't tell us a lot that we didn't already know. Because here's the reality. There was a positive test in March 2020. And you know what was reported out there was that he had a mild case of COVID. So it's possible we didn't see a large amount of antibodies you're going to get from a natural infection. Then we know that the report says he's fully vaccinated and boosted. And this previous test right now is just a test for SARS-CoV-2, the virus. We don't actually know if this is a severe case of COVID. We know that the vaccines do absolutely work, and their job is not necessarily to block you from getting a small piece of virus material in your nose that can be detected from a PCR. The job of the vaccine is to prevent severe hospitalizations and deaths, and that's what it's still doing. So I hope people don't read too much as his headline and, turn it into some misinformation campaign.
Yeah, point well made. By the way, I'm digging the art over your right shoulder there. Thank you for
I got to keep it funky and fresh.
Yes, you do. You always do. Thank you, Dr. Patel. And Maggie joining us now live. So great to have you live, Maggie. And you actually got to see the moment Chloe Kim locked down that gold medal. Tell us about it.
I know, Kara, it was amazing. I mean, to see the U.S. win a gold medal pinched me. To see it on the half pipe. Kara, this course is wilder in person than you can even imagine. It is steep, it is fierce, and Chloe just came out with that monster run. It's the only way to describe it. She knew she did amazing. She knew she had that top score for gold. She threw her hands up in the air. I mean, Kara, it was electric. The whole crowd could feel it. It was just an amazing thing to witness.
Yeah, one of my favorite sports. I tell you what, can't get enough of that ever since the days of Shaun White. All right, and just earlier this morning,
Yes.
Team USA scored another gold medal in freestyle skiing, mixed team aerials.
Yeah, this happened not too long ago, not too far from here. I love this event. It is wild to watch. And it was a huge gold medal, not only our third in just the last day, but also the first gold medal U.S. has taken home in aerial skiing since 1998. So this is a long time coming, Kira. Also extra special because this is a brand new event. It's the first time they've done this mixed team aerial freestyle skiing at the Olympics. So America now has the first gold medal ever in this event. It's a team that's made up of men and women. There were 3 people on it. Ashley Caldwell, Chris Lillis, and Justin Schoenfeld. They edged out China to get that gold. And Kara, just so you can get a sort of an idea of what they do, let me just read you the highest score, what that jump looked like. It was a back double, full, double, full jump. Scored 135. I don't know how you do that in general, let alone on skis. It is an amazing event. So proud of our team for getting gold.
All right, Maggie Rulli, we're going to be talking more. Appreciate all the energy and excitement from you as always. Psychotherapist Dr. Teresa Taylor Williams joining us now. So Dr. Taylor, before we kind of enter into a discussion, what do you think, first of all, of the debate that's happening right now?
I think it's a great debate because it brings attention to teen drug use, and it will have some parents open up the conversation with their children. And hopefully the children will go to their parents to have a conversation about what they're watching on this show.
Yeah, Teresa, I think many times we don't get a glimpse into the transparency and really the reality check of what our youth deal with when it comes to drug abuse. And for full disclosure, one of my very good friends stars in this show, Eric Dane, and he is sober now. And so he says he can really relate to this show from a personal level. The creator of the show, also sober now, and he directs it. So this isn't just random actors coming in and looking to glorify drug abuse is what they tell me. This is the real deal. And this is what we need to know. I mean, as a parent, it's a wake-up call for me. It's hard to watch.
It's very hard to watch. You know, first of all, as parents, we can't stand to watch our children suffer in any way, but to actually understand what they go through in their own struggles opens the door for parents to be able to have a conversation with them, to understand the challenges that they're facing, and also understand what's out there that's pulling them toward them. You know, our adolescents and our teen population have been through extreme stressful situations now related to the pandemic, being separated from their social environment. And so that pain has to be solved. That pain has to be addressed. And young people don't have a fully developed brain in order to be able to rationalize some of the actions that they're taking. And I think a show like this, if we look at the positives, it's allowing young people to say, I'm not alone, but maybe I also need to share this and to seek help.
Right, and look, we're talking about it right now, right? And then Zendaya has come out with this response. You know, she has a huge platform. She's a role model to so many young women and girls. So how powerful do you think it is that she's not even, you know, batting an eye? She's coming forward and saying, look, boom, this is a way to teach people what we really deal with.
I think Zendaya has a lot of courage. I think that her platform being so huge, she's a role model for so many young women, for so many young people. And so when she comes out in a positive statement and says, this is the reality, we can't hide this reality from our children. This is what some are involved in, and this is the life that they are in. And this might be the life that some may be prevented from seeking, since they see how she's suffering and what drug addiction really looks like. You know, we cannot hide the reality of situations from our young people. We need to have them as informed and educated as possible.
And I can tell you this cast doesn't just see it as a show, they see it as a mission in so many ways. Dr. Teresa Taylor Williams, thank you so much. Appreciate your time and the conversation.
Thank you for having me.
Breaking news in Midtown Manhattan tonight. A foreign diplomat suddenly attacked for no apparent reason. It happened on 5th Avenue and 35th Street. The 53-year-old South Korean diplomat was out walking at around 8 o'clock tonight. That's when another man suddenly hauled off and punched him in the face without saying a word. The diplomat suffered a broken nose. The suspect is still on the loose.
Encouraging news on the pandemic. Dr. Fauci says we're heading out of the full-blown pandemic phase of COVID-19 as more and more states drop mask mandates.
Among the 10 states with indoor mandates, 6 of them have said that they will allow their rules to expire in the coming days and weeks. Whit Johnson joins us now with more on what you need to know about masking. Good morning, Whit.
Robin, good morning. As the dominoes fall on mask mandates, Americans in places like New York City are left to navigate a patchwork of different rules and recommendations from their city, state, and federal government. But the CDC director says when it comes to removing the mask, we're not there yet. This morning, mask policy whiplash across the country as a cascade of states dropped their mandates, despite the CDC insisting most Americans should still be wearing them.
At this time, we continue to recommend masking in areas of high and substantial transmission. That's much of the country right now in public indoor settings.
Starting today, New York State lifting its indoor mask requirement or proof of vaccination for businesses, but waiting until early March to decide on schools.
New Yorkers, this is what we've been waiting for. Tremendous progress after 2 long years. And we're not done, but this is trending in a very, very good direction.
However, with local leaders able to make their own rules, in New York City, the mask mandate remains on mass transit and vaccination cards still required at restaurants, theaters, and arenas.
I own a business and I'm very close with people, so I'm going to wear it all the time. I'm not going to make my clients wear it, but I would like them to.
With new cases in the U.S. plunging nearly 70% in the last 3 weeks, there is mounting pressure on public officials to bring back a sense of normal life. Rhode Island and Illinois among 9 states removing indoor masking policies in the coming weeks.
I think all of us are getting tired of wearing masks, that's for sure.
Massachusetts joining Connecticut in dropping school mask requirements on February 28th.
On the one hand, I can't wait to get rid of them. On the other hand, I feel like it would be good important to wait until everybody's eligible to be vaccinated.
As states move ahead of federal guidelines, the White House addressing the mixed messaging, insisting internal planning is underway for the next phase of the pandemic.
We want to ensure that public health guidance we're providing meets the moment we're in. We recognize people are tired of the pandemic.
And there is news on the Pfizer vaccine for kids under 5. An FDA advisory committee is set to weigh in next week. Sources tell us there is enough supply and that the federal government is already prepping an initial 10 million doses to be shipped out once authorized. George.
Okay, Whit, thanks. Former President Trump facing questions over his mishandling of official records. The National Archives has asked the Justice Department to launch an investigation. Chief Washington correspondent John Carl is tracking the story. Good morning, John.
Good morning, George. And now there is a new report this morning that says that Donald Trump would actually occasionally flush documents down the toilet at the White House. This morning, a new report about the alleged destruction of documents in the Trump White House. According to an excerpt published in Axios from the upcoming book by New York Times reporter Maggie Haberman, while Trump was in the White House, residential staff periodically discovered wads of printed paper clogging a toilet and believed the president had flushed pieces of paper. This comes after revelations that Donald Trump took 15 boxes of official presidential records and memorabilia to his Mar-a-Lago resort in Florida when he left the White House. Officials at the National Archives have asked the Justice Department to look into whether the former president violated a law called the Presidential Records Act, which requires all official White House records to be preserved by the federal government. According to sources familiar with the request, those boxes included his correspondence with North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un.
He wrote me beautiful letters, and they're great letters. We fell in love.
Also included in those boxes, the infamous map of Hurricane Dorian's path that was doctored with a Sharpie, which attempted to prove Trump's incorrect prediction of the hurricane's path, as well as the letter that President Obama left him in the Resolute desk in the Oval Office.
This was the letter given to me by President Obama. So well written, so thoughtful, so thoughtful.
Sources tell ABC News that officials at the archives have also expressed concerns over whether classified information was mishandled. In a statement released late Wednesday, Donald Trump denied doing anything wrong with his official records, saying that his conversations with the archives have been collaborative and respectful. And another interesting item in the Maggie Haberman upcoming book, she says that Donald Trump has told people that he has remained in touch with North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un. George, communicating with Kim Jong-un even after he has left the White House.
That is something. And John, flushing papers down the toilet sounds so weird, but as you point out, it could also be illegal.
Absolutely. You're supposed to preserve those presidential records, certainly not flush them down the toilet.
John Carl, thanks very much.
To that disturbing string of violence in Houston, including an apparent road rage shooting that sent a 9-year-old girl to the hospital. Police are still searching for the shooter. The video, we have to warn you, is difficult to watch. Maria Villarreal has the latest for us.
This morning, mounting gun violence across Houston with a string of shootings and road rage incidents taking place in just 2 days. The latest Wednesday afternoon, leaving a man shot, wounded, but expecting to survive. And on Tuesday, just hours apart, 2 children shot. A 13-year-old now recovering after being shot 3 times. And 9-year-old Ashanti Grant, the victim of a separate road rage shooting incident.
Shooting in 1850s. And one's a road rage disturbance.
Grant is now in the hospital and fighting to recover. She and 3 members of her family were on their way to the grocery store when officials believe they got between 2 cars that appeared to be racing down the highway. The family says they were cut off several times by someone driving a white GMC Denali. The driver eventually pulling up behind them and opening fire, wounding the girl in the head.
GMC shot out the window and into the air.
The family pulling over at this Shell gas station for help. The mother's screams captured on surveillance video. First responders arriving within minutes. Her grandmother speaking with our ABC station, KTRK.
You know, you never imagine that it's going to hit you. And when it hits home, reality sets in that you're no different from anybody else.
You know, a bit of good news actually developing overnight, as we just mentioned. This 9-year-old girl, the family confirming to our partners here in Houston that she is doing okay, and she was able to wiggle her toes last night. And just to note, the suspects in all of the recent cases involving road rage still being searched for by police. Michael?
That is good news. Thank you, Maria. Thank you so much.
Where there are growing concerns about Iran. The regime there unveiled a new long-range missile sending a defiant message as talks with the U.S. about its nuclear program resume. Chief White House correspondent Cecilia Vega has the latest. Good morning, Cecilia.
Hi, George. Good morning to you. The administration right now is issuing a dire warning. Officials say Iran could produce enough material for a nuclear weapon in just a matter of weeks. Now, to be clear, we want to emphasize experts say Iran is still at least a year away from building an actual nuclear weapon, but they are very close to having enough nuclear fuel to get there. Adding to the concerns, take a look at this right there, this video on Iranian state TV showing that new long-range missile. Tehran says it's highly accurate, it can penetrate missile shields and reach Israel, and as you said, American bases in the region. All of this is happening right now as these high-stakes talks in Vienna are underway. The United States at the table with Tehran and other world leaders. The administration trying to get Iran to not get back on its nuke, to not have a nuclear policy. The President Trump withdrew from that nuclear agreement. You'll remember that. The U.S. is at its 8th round of negotiations right now. The press secretary saying that a deal could be in sight, George, but she is warning that if it is not reached in the coming weeks, Iran's nuclear advances make it impossible for the U.S. to be back in this deal. So, George, this morning, these stakes could not be any higher.
Yeah, this last round could be make or break. Okay, Cecilia, thanks very much. Mike?
To the latest on the showdown with Russia over Ukraine. Russia holding major military exercises on the border while Ukrainian troops are beginning a new round of drills. Terry Moran is on the scene in the Ukraine. Good morning, Terry.
Good morning, Michael. These next 10 days are shaping up to be a critical period in this crisis. This morning, Russia and Belarus, I should say, beginning those huge military exercises just north of Ukraine in Belarus. NATO says 30,000 Russian troops are on hand. Ukraine says it's less than that. And among their tasks, they'll be drilling on sophisticated surface-to-air missile systems and preparing for urban warfare. At the same time, the Russian Navy has now announced that it will shut down access to huge swaths of the Black Sea. That's Ukraine's southern coastline, while they conduct missile tests and artillery tests at sea there. Russia will be effectively blockading Ukraine's ports and coastline. And as you say, the Ukrainian military beginning its own major drills now. So now there are forces in the field, combat ready on both sides of the border. Meanwhile, U.S. troops in Poland, the Pentagon confirming, are preparing to help evacuate Americans from here in Ukraine if war comes. George?
Terry Moran.
Now, that huge day for Team USA at the Olympics, winning 2 gold medals overnight. Figure skater Nathan Chen and snowboarder Chloe Kim at the top of the podium. Maggie Rulli is there in China with the latest. Good morning, Maggie.
Hey, Robin, good morning. What a day for Team USA. Not only do we have those 2 absolutely explosive performances, but just seconds ago, we found out Team USA has gotten another gold in mixed team aerials. Robin, what a day.
The comeback king, Nathan Chen, leaving it all on the ice, nailing quad after quad after quad after quad. A fall in 2019 knocked him out of medal contention. This time, the 22-year-old's stratospheric performance set to Elton John's Rocket Man, rocketing him to gold, his second medal of the Games, after helping the U.S. nab silver in the team competition. But this morning, the results of that team event could be in flux. The medal ceremony, which was scheduled for Tuesday night, was suddenly delayed due to what the IOC is calling a legal issue. According to NBC, 15-year-old Russian Olympic Committee star Kamila Valieva, who on Monday became the first woman to land a quad in the Olympics and helped the ROC win gold in that event, tested positive for trametazidine, a banned substance before the Games. Trametazidine helps the heart function when it's receiving low oxygen. When used in sports, it has the potential to help athletes perform with a higher heart rate for longer.
What this drug is intended to do is to treat angina in heart patients. Obviously, Valieva is 15 years old, so that calls into question right away, why would she need a heart medication? If she needs it, she would have a therapeutic use exemption.
Meanwhile, in the mountains, Team USA delivering in snowboard, making history on the halfpipe. Chloe Kim defending her victory in 2018, starting with a monster run right out of the gate, hitting 2 1080s and a technical backside 540. Dropping to her knees, the 21-year-old knew she nailed it. The competition trying to keep up, but that top score stayed untouchable for all 3 rounds. Chloe's now the first woman to win 2 gold medals in the halfpipe.
And guys, we were there to see Chloe cinch gold. The moment she crushed the run, she knew it. She threw her hands up into the air. It was absolutely electric. And over on the ice, we just saw that big night for Nathan Chen. But it wasn't just Nathan. I want you guys to take a look at this. This is Donovan Carrillo. At 22 years old, he made history, becoming the first skater ever for Mexico to make it to the round of free skate in the Olympics. And while he didn't get a medal this time around, guys, it is still such an achievement.
It really is. And his expression after, you just know that it was an Olympic moment for him. So Maggie, bring us up to date on the medal race. Where do we stand?
Well, Robin, this is exciting. We now have 4 golds, 10 medals. We are quickly climbing that leaderboard. And the good news, Robin, we're only just getting started.
Just getting started, as you are. You're having a great time. Thank you for bringing it every morning for us, Maggie. Keep on doing it.
To prices across the country soaring from groceries to cars. Our chief economics correspondent, Rebecca Jarvis, is here with that for us this morning. Good morning, Rebecca.
Good morning, Michael. And Americans are feeling this, the highest inflation we've seen in this country in nearly 40 years, with prices up 7.5% in the last 12 months.
This morning, inflation up. Since December 2020, the price of a pound of bacon rising more than $1. A dozen eggs up 21%, and a sirloin steak up a whopping $2 a pound. Goldman Sachs economists estimating those food prices could jump another 5 to 6% this year. But it's not just the grocery bill eating into family budgets. Nationwide, gas prices are up 50% from last year. Plus, the average price of a new car, a record-breaking $47,077. Nearly $6,000 more than a year ago. With 82% of new vehicle purchases above the suggested retail price, according to Edmunds.com, some automakers now enacting policies to stop the markups. Like Ford, whose CEO issued this warning on an earnings call last week.
We don't like making our customers wait, and we're taking action to ensure that they don't pay unreasonable markups.
And GM, which said in a statement, "We want every customer to have a great experience. The majority of our dealers know this. However, we want everyone on the same page."
And it's not only impacting car prices and the cost of fuel, it's also impacting the cost of insurance on the car, with many car insurers charging upwards of 6 to 8% more this year than last. So even if you got a raise, it doesn't feel like it, guys.
Everything going up. All right, Rebecca, thank you.
New revelations about Bob Saget's cause of death. The star's family released a statement saying that Saget died last month in a Florida hotel room after suffering head trauma. TJ Holmes here with the details. Good morning, TJ.
George, good morning. You remember we all felt the shock of hearing the news about his death, but then trying to figure out the details. He was found in a hotel room by himself. Authorities say there was no signs of foul play. The room was in order, no drugs or alcohol involved. His family said this is an otherwise healthy guy, and now we're getting word that he died of a head injury, and perhaps he didn't even realize how bad that injury was.
Now, I really got to go now because my shorts are cooked and my noodles are dry. Hello.
Bob Saget's family has revealed his cause of death, weeks now after the comedian was found unresponsive in a Florida hotel room.
We have an unresponsive guest in a room. My officer is telling me that there's no pulse.
Saget died of head trauma, according to the family statement, saying authorities concluded that he accidentally hit the back of his head on something, thought nothing of it, and went to sleep, adding no drugs or alcohol were involved. An autopsy completed last month also showed no evidence of foul play.
So Dave says, come do this, it's going to be fun.
The 65-year-old was found in his hotel bed hours after what would be his final show, performing on his stand-up comedy tour just outside Jacksonville, Florida. Saget saying in a tweet, "Loved tonight's show. I'm happily addicted again to this."
He just wanted to spread love and laughter and
He did it so amazingly.
The Full House star's wife, Kelly Rizzo, talked to me days after her husband's passing.
What was the last text?
Just, I love you so much, and I can't wait to see you tomorrow, and I love you so much, and can't wait to see you tomorrow.
What was the last conversation, phone call?
He was just on his way home or back to his hotel and just was telling me what a wonderful show he had and how it was so amazing, and he was happy and just loving what he did. It made him so happy to just bring laughter to people.
Wearing multiple hats over his 4-decade-long career.
I never got to sleep over my friends' houses. Anybody get to do that? You slept over my friends' houses?
Saget was the beloved television host of America's Funniest Home Videos.
Hi, everybody. I'm Bob Saget, and this is a new suit. You like it?
And became a star as America's dad, Danny Tanner, on the long-running sitcom Full House.
Super Dad, flying out the door. Super Dad, you can eat right off my floor.
Even returning to the role that made him famous in a recent Netflix revival.
All right, come on in. Again? Come in.
Oh, jeez.
Just this week here on GMA, his Full House co-star Jodie Sweetin spoke about one thing Saget taught her that she won't forget, how to laugh through pain.
Bob had a lot of loss and a lot of grief throughout his life, with his sister's passing, his parents. He never stopped laughing. He never lost the ability to laugh at himself, to laugh at a situation, to, make fun of something that would otherwise feel like it was going to break you.
It was on stage where friends say he was most at home, returning to stand-up in recent years to make people laugh.
He was just so wonderful. I was just so honored to be his wife and to be able to be a part of it and bring him any bit of happiness that I could, because he deserved it so much.
And even through this difficult time, Robin, in the statement that they put out explaining what his cause of death was, they ended the statement by saying, we want everybody to remember the lessons that Bob taught us, which are to be kind to everyone, tell the ones you love them, and go through your difficult times with hugs and laughter. So still a lesson, a positive message they wanted to make sure they got out at this difficult time, Robin.
That's right, TJ, and it was so good. It was important also to the family that they be the first ones to reveal this news, and knowing that his many fans would want to know. Thanks, TJ. Chief Medical Correspondent Dr. Jennifer Ashton joins us now. We hear this news, and how often does this happen, that a head injury leads to something being fatal?
Robin, we have to do some mini med school here and look at the anatomy of the brain. There's blood vessels there. This is a very unforgiving organ for trauma, but it's a closed space. You have the hard skull, you have the soft brain, and in between that, a little bit of bleeding can cause compression on the brain, and in some cases can be fatal. So is this something that is common? No, but can it happen? Yes, it can.
So it's not totally unusual.
Well, if you look at the statistics, and again, this is awareness for traumatic brain injury. We often hear about it in sports or in military settings, but people can slip and fall in their own homes. According to the CDC, there are estimated 1.5 million traumatic brain injuries in the country every year. About 230,000 people are hospitalized each year for this. And unfortunately, in 2019, there were 61,000 deaths due to traumatic brain injury. So as we say in medicine, an increased risk of a rare event is still rare, but if it happens to you, it's a big deal.
That's right. So are there any warning signs, any symptoms?
I think it's important for people to understand when you talk about the brain, you always want to err on the side of caution. So the big signs and symptoms that we think about are headache, nausea and vomiting, a loss of consciousness with a trauma or confusion. If you have hit your head, you actually want to err on the side of caution. We all minimize our symptoms and we don't like to bring attention to ourselves, but this is a situation where you want to seek medical attention, you want to get it checked out. It is better to be safe than sorry.
Absolutely, Jen. As always, thank you. All right.
With the latest on the Delphi murder case, nearly 5 years after the killing of 2 Indiana teenage girls. Police say they may be closing in on the killer. Amy is here with the latest on the investigation and what the families are saying now. Good morning, Amy.
Yeah, good morning to you, Michael. This is the murder case of 2 young girls who managed to record the suspect with a phone. But 5 years later, he has still not been caught. While the case remains unsolved, Indiana State Police say they still receive 25 to 30 tips a week from all over the world. And they say this case is far from cold. Nearly 5 years since 13-year-old Abby Williams and 14-year-old Libby German were murdered on this Indiana hiking trail. Their killer still at large. And this morning, Indiana State Police issuing a new warning to the culprit.
My resolve to catch him is as strong now as it was day one. But the difference now between now and day one is we know about you. A lot about you. Today could be the day. Sleep well.
Abby and Libby were last seen near this bridge in February of 2017. Authorities say Libby recorded this image of the alleged killer on her iPhone, along with haunting audio of his voice moments before their murder, apparently telling them to go down the hill. State police also urging anyone who may have communicated with this phony social media profile, Anthony_Shots, to come forward. Police releasing information about these fake Snapchat and Instagram accounts in December, saying the person who created them tried to solicit nude images, obtain addresses, and meet juvenile females. Investigators say the model in these images is not a suspect.
That's generated a tremendous number of leads for us, and that's as far as I can go.
If you knew Libby, she had her phone attached to her hip all the time.
Libby's grandparents believe the teen knew something wasn't right with the man she encountered, prompting her to record him.
Something inside me just says she was going to film that and come home and say, look, Grandpa, look at this guy. You know, he was out there really weird.
Abby's mother, Anna, reflecting on what her daughter would have been like today.
They'd be finishing up their freshman year in college. It's hard to believe. She would have turned into a really good young lady.
Both families desperate for the one tip that will bring them closure.
It's probably the smallest thing, but it's that small thing that we're missing. And that's what we just keep hoping for, is that that one small thing will come to light and that this will be over soon.
This guy could strike again. You know, it could be your kids, it happened to our family. I don't want it to happen to anybody else. This is not something anybody should have to go through.
No, it isn't. And Police Superintendent Carter has vowed to forge ahead until the killer is found. Hopefully he will soon be able to give the families of Libby and Abby some closure. That's what his hope is, and certainly take a dangerous man off the streets, guys.
What those families are going through.
Yep. And we all hope for that, Amy. Thank you.